Alrighty, I've got a quick tutorial for you guys today on the week 2 team assignment. The goal of this team assignment is to make it so our product pages are a little more dynamic. Right now, if we wanted to add any new products, we'd have to make a new index or a new HTML file for each of those products. See how we've got the Marmot, we've got the North Face Talus. Instead, we want it to have just one index HTML page with a blank main section. And then when we call our JavaScript code, we want it to actually fill in whatever's going to be in that main section. So that's the goal of this assignment. So we're going to hop over to our page here. We're going to jump down to step 5. That's the first actual coding that we're going to be doing. In step 5, he already gives us a nice bit of code here that we're going to add into our utilities. So we're going to paste that code into the utilities here. We're making a function called getParam. And what this function is going to do is we're going to be passing in through our URL up here. You'd see up here, we're going to be passing in a product ID. So using this function, we're going to be able to get the string that is in that product ID. So it's going to check that search bar. It's going to be looking for a query string, and it's going to give us the actual product ID. You would then go over to your index HTML, and this step is a little misleading. It says that you're going to want to replace that href, product pages Marmot Ajax 3 HTML, and you want to replace it with product pages / product 880R. What you actually want to do is you want to take this and you want to append it to the end of your Marmot Ajax 3 HTML. So, for example, down here we'd go to line 57. That's where our first one is. And right now mine says index. Yours will say Marmot Ajax 3. And you would append that product 880RR to the end. If you didn't do that, then you'd just be going nowhere. That was one of the struggles that we first had. So append that to the end. And then you're going to want to hop over to your product.js file, and we're actually going to want to call that getParameter function. So we're calling the getParameter function, and we're passing it product. That's the string. That's going to be our product ID, and we're going to log that. Okay, so test that code out. Make sure it works. Make sure that in your console log you get this string back. Okay. After we've added that code, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to make a new class, and we're going to make it in our product details.mjs file. I have to go ahead and make this file, and this class is going to be product details. It's going to take two things. It's going to take the product ID and the data source that we get in our product.js. So it wants a string, and it wants the JSON file source. We're then going to have to make a function to initialize those things. Okay, so we're going to skip over this right now. That's we're going to use that later. We're going to use the product that we pass, and we're going to get that from the data source that we send it. So we're taking just that same function that we had in our product.js down here, and we're going to this one instead of the eTarget dataset ID. Now we're going to be using the product ID that we've created. So after that, we're going to want to be able to call our add to cart function, right? So we now have our JSON files that we're using. This is the first kind of change that I made from the teacher's code. I did a little differently than he did. To be able to call this add event listener, you have to have a function in here, right? So my first mistake was just saying this.add to cart parentheses, and what it would do is when you open up the page, it's going to instantly run add to cart. So each time I was refreshing the page, it was adding a product to the cart. And we don't want that, so you have to make an anonymous function, or you can do what the teacher did here in his code. He does a bind with that, and I'm not too familiar with this yet. I'll have to do some more reading. Both ways work. For me, this way just made a little more sense to me. So now we're able to add our items to the cart. The next thing I want to do is to be able to make those pages more dynamic, right? So that's going to be a little further down in the steps here. We want to make a template, and we go ahead and make that up here. We make a function to make the product template, and we're just going to take the, if we hop over to our Cedar Ridge index, we're going to be making a template out of this stuff, right? So you can just take that, copy and paste it over into your product details, and then we're going to change it to use the actual JSON file, right? So each time it'll be different. Next thing is we want to call it. So down here, we've got we're going to be calling that function, and I did this a little differently than he did as well. I went ahead and gave my index a ID, product details, and then just use that in our HTML function there. He made a query selector, so that's where we kind of differed. He queries for main and then adds it in that way. For me, it just made more sense to add an ID to it. So that's what I did. And that's the entire thing. If we take a look over at our pages over here, we can see that when we click on it, we're going to index HTML, and we're passing it in the product 880 RR. You want to make sure to change in your index HTML here. You got to change all those hrefs. You want to do index.html product, and you can go ahead and look into the tense JSON file, and that's where you can get all those IDs. They aren't in exact order, so you'll want to make sure you get the right ID associated with, so let's say this is Talus Tent 4-person 3-season. You want to make sure that you get that right, Talus Tent 4-person 3-season. And I think you have to scroll down for the next ones, because this one's like 985 PR Alpine Guide Tent 3-person 4-season. I think there's a few, yep, Talus Tent 3-person 3-season before that. So that's another thing to watch out for. Make sure you get the right IDs in that index file. And it should all work now. Make sure to save. If we click on it, we see we're actually at index, but it looks different, right? We got the 985 RF. Whereas if we're here, we're still at index. Shows a different thing. We're using that product ID to get everything. So much easier to be able to add new products this way. I hope that helped with any of the questions that you might have had. Y'all have a good one.